going to test and look over on our old LinkedIn platform. It looks like it's live. How about that? It worked.
Gotcha.
Cool. Well, then we should be good to go. Hi,
Let's do it.
everybody. Good to see you. Oh no, the event will start soon. The host has still not started it. So I've got a backup plan. I am going. Oh no, it's working. It is working. Riverside, you are actually working. Okay. I'm going to mute the live stream so I don't hear myself twice. Hi, everybody. Good to have you, and glad that things are actually working on the second go round. Today, I am joined by the esteemed Sebastian UX Worthy III Esquire, and we're
Nice
going
to
to
be here.
chat. Sebastian, what are we chatting about today?
What are we chatting about today? Sometimes I question whether or not I should have become a plumber. Why did I get into the corporate world, man? That's
Hmm.
we could chat about that. We could chat about the weather. I'm down chat with whatever you want to talk about. This is your show. I'm just here for
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, and I think it's a good topic to come up or start with. Maybe this idea that for a lot of folks, we set out to go make things, or perhaps we went to school to explore creative acts, and suddenly we find ourselves in a room where we are asked about our Q1 plan, and we have to estimate our level of effort
Yep.
with somebody that doesn't seem to be using math at all. And maybe we sit there going like, what happened? How did we get
Yeah.
here? Um, is that what you mean?
Yeah, pretty
Like, should
much.
you have
Yeah,
never
pretty
done it?
much. Well, so part of me too. I've worked in enterprise for a long time.
Mm,
And, I really enjoyed enterprise. I thought it was, like, a very rewarding, work, doing work for people who like, a lot of times, blue collar workers, I worked for a long time in, like, large enterprise manufacturing, and so the software
mm,
that I was building was for, blue collar shift workers, making their job easier so they didn't have, like all the paperwork and stuff gets ripped and torn, having to redo their whole the week's worth of work again because like that paper that was tracking all the work got lost or something, and so making their job easier and less stressful and everything else and letting them focus on the actual work. A very rewarding, altruistic kind of thing. And then recently,
mm,
about a year ago, I got into commercial software, and it's
mm.
not at all like that at all. Like, conversion rate, "Oh, your conversion rate dropped. What metrics are you tracking?" And blah, 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 and I'm just like, "God, fuck, like, what happened to time on task and trying to improve that?" Like, I miss time on
Oh,
task metrics,
yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that. And so, for me, it's a lot of it is the software industry in general, but also working in commercial versus enterprise. I think I've grown over the last year to realize, like,
mm,
I freaking hate commercial software, man. It is not my jam.
mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. I think no, if I hear you correctly, it's perhaps earlier in your career or in previous versions of your career, you could see that your work was leading to having some type of meaning for somebody that you
Exactly, yeah.
cared about.
Yeah.
You understood what somebody dealing with a lot of paperwork was dealing with, and how you might be able to help them a little bit in some way.
Yeah.
And perhaps it's an evolution of scale and maturity and capitalism and all those things that uh, many years later where we find ourselves making things where there's like no connection to anything that maybe
Yeah.
we think about or sit
Yeah. Well,
home with.
what's
I'm
what's
curious if like your background of getting into what you did, like, was your parents, were your family, were people you looked up to, were they doing this type of blue collar work, and is that like a
No,
connection point for
my
you?
parents were white collar, but definitely middle
Mm.
class. Like neither one of them went to college. I think both of them got an associate's degree from a community college. My dad actually dropped out in like sixth grade and got a GED.
Oh
But
wow.
they weren't like blue collar labor, day labor type working class. And my mom actually worked as well, so she wasn't like a stay at home mom or anything. Um, but it's funny, man. I think about the way we talk about UX, the craft. We have this craft. We have to
Mm.
focus on our craft. And then I think about like actual craftspeople, like carpenters, for instance, metal workers, even like people who like welders, like they obsess over like the weld, and you can look at somebody almost like a signature, like, oh, that's Jim's weld. That's Ryan's weld.
Mm.
And when I think about craft as it comes to UX, it's like kind of a joke. Like I think it's such a silly analogy.
Mm.
Like we talk about craft, but then, like at the end of the day, most of us, at least, especially on the commercial side, like we're just trying to trick people into handing over money to somebody else to get them to make a profit. you know and it's like, what's the
Yeah.
craft? What
Yeah.
craft
Yeah.
are we excited about there? Like I mean, I get like, design, topography, spacing, gradients and use of color and all that stuff. Like, yeah, I think there's a craft there, but we're not like artists. Like, I mean, you could make the case that like a welder's not an artist or a commercial carpenter is not necessarily an artist, but there's craftsmanship there, and there's certainly craftsmanship in our work as well. But, I don't know, maybe
Mm.
there's not that much difference between a plumber who's just trying to make a paycheck and a carpenter who's trying to make a paycheck and a designer who's trying to make a paycheck. But I think about, crafts people, right?
Mm.
Like carpenters who, this beautiful ornate, like I live in like a really beautiful old house built in like the 1800s.
Mm.
And, the craftsmanship, like I think like, oh, look at that woodworking, that gingerbreading on the front of the house. And, like you don't see that kind of stuff anymore, right? But like I think about craft, I think about that. And I don't know, man.
Mm.
It's kind of, I always laugh like when people start talking about craft UX design. I'm like, we're just fucking hawking CTAs to trick people into clicking shit.
Well,
I don't know, man. I'm just like, what's the point? Sometimes
well,
I
I
question.
think yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned welding and plumbing and any of these types of things, and I think some of my favorite YouTube videos are the welders who are like,
Yeah,
have you ever seen it? They're working with an
yeah, yeah, yeah.
apprentice and they're like, I'd
Yep.
pay you 25 bucks an hour, or maybe you're still at 17, or wow, you're at 36 bucks an hour, based on the beads of the welds. I
Hmm.
I like watching those. It's pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
What I think even in those industries is I'm sure that there are plumbers who have do not wake up every day going, "Damn, I love this."
Right. Yeah. They probably
It's
hit it. Yeah,
it's
sure.
sort of I got good at this
Yeah.
and it affords me a life and helps me, make a living. I
Yeah.
don't live for it. And
Sure.
I think uh the conversation of craft, at least for me, um throughout my career, it always felt like you can only be a true designer, or you can only be like true if you care intimately about that stuff.
Hmm.
And uh you know uh, that's great. Craft is good, and certainly we have different levels or definitions of what craft means, but um is it okay that it's a job? You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
is it
Yeah.
okay that it affords us a life to live in this, house that you love
Right.
with the
Yeah.
ornate details? And I think by leaving that part of the conversation out, it it can alienate sort of um, quite a large percentage of people who do this work, who can actually mature the work itself if they were invited to the conversation,
Yeah.
rather than it, sort of being focused on craft and taste. And let's face it, all of that is very subjective, from person to person, to company. It depends. It always depends. And yet it's this bar that, like, if you don't believe in those things, or if you're not passionate about those things, should you even be part of the conversation?
Yeah. Well, you bring up a good point too, because like when you mentioned before about like welders and the beads, and I can tell like the level based on their bead, and there's those people that like give a shit, right? And they give a shit, and they are really good at their craft. But like they're still, I feel like some of those people, and not all of them, I can't speak for everybody, but it's a job at the end of the day. Like, do they live to be welders? No. I mean, some of them maybe. I don't want to discount people who are who do feel that way. But it's funny because like UX designers, we just feel so like this is such an altruistic job, and I think that's such a load of shit, to be honest. I mean, it can
Yeah.
be, it certainly can be.
Yeah.
But like we're not saving babies, we're not saving puppy dogs a lot of times. I mean, we're
Mm,
like I said, we're most of us are there to help a company make a bunch of money. And even you've probably seen this, I'm sure, in the discourse and the zeitgeist over the last several years. It's learn the business. You got to speak your business acumen and blah, blah, blah. Because I think what we realize is that altruism doesn't translate to the business world and nobody else gives a shit.
mm,
The product
mm,
managers, are they as concerned with like craft and no, like you as a designer, like I mean, look on LinkedIn, how many people it's like solving problems for blah blah blah, like I just
mm,
think like it's such a yeah, we are solving problems, but I don't know, it's kind of funny to me. I always kind of giggle at that. And not not to say anyone who has that on their LinkedIn profile is bad or anything, but I we take our job so seriously, and I think like for me, like I've gotten laid
mm.
off a couple times, and like I think the first thing I realized was like I've been tying my job to my identity and my self-worth
Yeah.
for a long time. And, like, it's just a job. I'm there to do work, and you were there to pay me, and if you don't pay me, I won't do this work, and I will like, people all the time ask me
Mm,
at work, like, "Yeah, how you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. I got paid on Friday. I'm doing great." That's all I can ask for. I don't how many iterations do you want of this thing? And I've worked with so many designers who are like, "Well, that's not right. You can't do blah, blah, blah." And I'm just like, does it really matter? Like, you're getting
mm,
paid, dude. Like, do it twice. Like, do it again. Like, if they ask you to do it again, who gives a shit? Um, I don't know. That's not to say
mm.
like we shouldn't take care, just like the welder, right? Like, I can look
Yeah.
at your beads and
I'm
I can tell.
curious.
So I think
I'm
there's still
I'm
the
curious
importance
because
of your job, but
I'm gonna guess that you're maybe a little further into your career. Um, and
yes, yeah,
one of the things that certainly for myself, when I was starting out, um, I was at a stage of life where I was also like um, just trying to find anything that I was good at that people would pay me for.
hmm yeah,
And
yeah,
so all of the push to get better, all of the motivation to do this as work was largely tied to a stage of life where I didn't quite know who I was. And so I was throwing all of my
mm,
value into this thing because it
yeah,
was a large part of my life. And uh, that changes over time. And I think we see this as people go through. And you mention identity, and I wonder if you could speak a little bit of that, of how closely was your identity tied to this work earlier in your career? When did that start to change, and how did that start to change, if it did?
yeah. I think it started to change when I got the shit canned, and then when it happened
Mm,
again, I was like, "What the hell? Like, why? This is just a job," And you know, tying all of my income to one salary, I realized was just such a bad idea because the
mm,
more especially like AI is coming in and, maybe we're gonna lose our jobs because AI, maybe not, I don't know. But the reality is I think, our career, and I think as I get older, I'm also seeing a bit of, like, maybe even, like, age discrimination perhaps. And so,
mm,
um, I'm asking too much money, even if it's not age, I'm a certain level and I'm asking more money than maybe a junior would make. So therefore, hire the junior. And so the salary, the big fancy tech salary is not guaranteed anymore. And what I'm realizing is like when I was a kid, my parents, like I said, they didn't go to college and they were like, "You gotta get into computers," That was like the thing, they would
mm,
call it computers, was, "Get into computers, that's the future." And, they 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 pushed me away from trades, they pushed me away from the trade school. They
Mm,
said, "No, don't do that. Go get a college degree." You know, I went to an all boys Catholic high school that was a college prep school, and I think like 99 or 98% of the graduates went on to college. And it was a
mm,
big school. I had like 380 kids in my class. And we had this one friend who decided, screw that, I'm not going to college. I'm going to be a plumber. And we all just made fun of him. You know, he's like middle class, kids, suburbanites, like making fun of this guy
mm,
because he did. And he was we were friends. So we weren't picking on anything. But anyway, we were always ragging on him, like, oh, you're going to be a plumber, you know. And now this guy's a master plumber, runs his own team, he's got his own company. He's making God knows what. I'm sure he's making more than me. He's got a condo down in Florida and a boat that he goes fishing all the time
mm,
and stuff. And I'm just looking at him, I'm like, "What happened?" Like, we were supposed to be the ones with the life and the fishing and, because we had the fancy college degrees and the fancy corporate jobs, but here this guy is with no college degree, living
mm.
the dream. And,
I
I
think,
go back in time and think like, "What happened?" I don't know.
well, I think this is my hypothesis. I am not an expert in this. We do have an audience question coming up too that I want to
Okay,
get to.
awesome. Yeah, yeah.
But I think, you talk about the school that you went to, that it being a college prep school, and especially, if we're talking about being here in the US, that a lot of school is meant to be this factory to become a professional worker.
Mhm.
And college certainly uh, pushes us to do that too.
Right.
And I imagine that if somebody decides to be in a trade, there's not that pressure to level up, to go from an L4 to an L5, to become a manager, to become a thing. That that sort of system, if you will, of what does it mean to work and how your identity is tied to that, is maybe not there. And I've talked to lots of people about this, and I think what tech has afforded a lot of people is the attraction to, say, higher salaries, which is a change of lifestyle. And I have seen a lot of people now stuck in this position where they have a lifestyle that
Yes.
now they
So agree.
can't really afford, or
Yep.
that the market has been changing, that now there's all this pressure, um, that is not just about the work or the salary, but now it's like, oh, this is real pressure around, am I going to be able to keep a roof over my head? Am I going to be able to eat? And it's tied a lot, I think, to this uh, lifestyle that we're sort of encouraged to lead as well. That's my hypothesis. But
Yeah.
we have a question
Yeah.
for you, which is, I'm
All right.
curious, when you say commercial, do you mean consumer apps or just anything revenue driven?
Yeah, it was specifically what I mean. I could have been more specific, but I spent a long time on internal applications for
Hmm.
employees, employee-facing internal applications, and more recently, it's been more consumer-facing, and there's a drive for conversion, there's a drive for, revenue drivers, if there's a huge usability issue, for instance, but it's not a revenue driver, nobody gives a shit, nobody wants to fix it, how do you
Mm,
make people, convert? And that's the kind of stuff where it's like the opposite, I think, of that altruistic philosophy that so many of us have, where we wanna
mm,
solve problems for users. Well, like, when that problem that a user has doesn't make the company any money, nobody wants to solve it, and so there's a cognitive dissonance there, I think, between that altruism that we're often spouting, that, like, we're there to solve user problem, I'm a user defender, I fight for users, but, like, bullshit, you don't, because it's not your job to decide what gets built unless you're, in charge, and most of us are not, and you're stuck
mm.
designing that revenue driver and making, people click the button to make more orders, or more signups or whatever it is, and if that isn't a revenue driver, you're not asked to work on it, and it's not your decision to make, generally speaking, and I find that cognitive dissonance, like, really hard to swallow, to be honest.
I wonder. I do too, and I also wonder. what role, say, the design industry had in um, guising that real thing. What do I mean by that is you know, we work for organizations that decide to have a business model as their means to be a company, run, survive as a company. Um, right. So subscriptions came around, or low pricing, or
Mhm.
being a middle person, if you will. And I think for me at least, and I want to get your opinion, that stuff was never talked about in the design spheres. And it was almost an affront to what was happening in the real world, which is like,
Mhm.
yeah, I hear you, but you get paid because more people are converting from a trial to, an annual subscription, that type of
Right.
thing. I wonder what would it be like if that were to have been talked about early on,
Yeah.
that the role that we do is, yes, to help users, but also to recognize that we work at, say, a bank, and a bank makes money through fees, and
Mhm.
that's how it goes. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I'm
Well, I
curious.
think it's
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's definitely tied to the way design education has been traditionally taught, which is through the art school. And
Mm,
so design is taught through the art school, and art is a very altruistic thing. Art is valuable for art's sake, right? It's not
mm,
valuable. It's got intrinsic value. Design, UX design does not have intrinsic value, right? It's only valuable if it can make money for a business. And designers come out of art school with theory and all these, maybe I don't want to call it impractical concepts, but like these theories about how to do good design, how, like, what how do you get from point A to point B, and what is good design? And it's taught through the lens of design. It's not taught through
mm,
the lens of what's valuable for a business. And so, the product managers often have MBAs. Obviously executives have MBAs, master's degrees in business and things like that. And they couldn't care less about your your fancy art degree. What they care about is whether or not it's driving revenue and it's making money. And I think if design were taught through the lens of business, I don't think we
mm,
would have this ingrained altruism, this fake altruism. I'll call it like a fake altruism, um, in that design program where we're solving for problems and we're fighting for users and things like that. And I'm not
mm,
saying that design can't be altruistic. Like, you can absolutely use design principles to solve problems for users and fight for users and solve altruistic problems in an altruistic way. But I don't think that's what people are hiring you to do. I think that's the real disconnect.
mm,
Nobody's paying you, you know, $300,000 a year plus equity to fight for a
mm,
user when that means it's not going to make the business any money. There's an expectation there that
mm,
there will be a return on their investment, right? And designers are never even taught about return on an investment. I don't think anyone's ever taught that in any design program that I know of, at least. Maybe there are some out there that do. But yeah, I think
mm.
I think it's ultimately like how design is taught. It's not taught through business lens. It's taught through the lens of art.
Yeah. I I think there is value in how it is taught in that way. And yes, and if um that's the only way, right? Sooner or later a designer is going to run into that um barrier in their career, and what I've seen is how greatly it affects them, and how demoralizing it can be. I want to go back because you uh and if we can, if you're okay
Yeah,
with
sure.
digging into it,
Yeah, let's dig in a little.
you've used the word altruism a lot, but you mentioned fake altruism,
Mhm.
and I'm curious. um I want to hear more about that. What do you mean
Yeah,
by
I've
that?
I've never actually said that until just now, so maybe we can explore that a little bit.
Yeah,
I
I'm
can't.
all for it.
I have a very bad case of ADHD, and I don't even remember the context when I said fake altruism, to be perfectly honest. But what I think I meant was we've got, again, you mentioned, there's value, I think, in teaching that
Mm,
art aspect of design and the value of it and fighting for users and things like that. And I think if I could go back maybe a little bit too, I think there's one of the reasons why design took up the mantra of fighting for users. We're called user experience designers, or at least we were, user-centered design. That was like the thing, right? And it was the antithesis of the people who were not. So why call it
mm,
user-centered design if everyone was doing it before, right? The reason why was no one was doing it. And so they weren't focused on users, and we were. We were the ones who were doing it because no one else is. And I think that we got caught up in that. And so there's that altruism there. And when I say fake, I don't mean that like people are fake. I don't mean that. I don't mean like someone has this
mm,
sense like they're faking it. I think it's this sort of misplaced altruism, maybe is a better way to say it than fake. But it's this
mm,
misplaced altruism that, like, in our job, when it is transactional and you are paying me to do a thing, I don't think that altruism is valuable for anyone. It doesn't
mm,
like, when I think about someone paying me 300 grand or whatever the fancy tech salary is, no one's paying me that because I'm fighting for users, you know?
mm.
And so that's where that misplaced altruism maybe is a better way to say it than fake. Does that make
And
sense?
maybe, maybe the question is, can you be altruistic if you are taking a $300,000 salary to, you know,
Right,
work for a
yeah, it's just
company
it's
that
funny you mentioned that too,
succeeds,
because
right?
like,
Yeah.
yeah, like,
Where I
nonprofits
was
aren't
thinking
paying that
you
much,
were
you know?
yeah, where I was thinking you were going with it is where my mind went, was more into, um, is there an environment that designers have to present altruistic?
Oh,
Like,
right,
when
yeah.
they are showing up into the world, is there pressure for them to show up in an altruistic way, and that, this is my passion and whatnot? Um, is like, that's where my head was going. Like, is that a
Interesting.
thing
Well,
where,
I think that's where,
it's
like,
like coding in a way,
yeah, 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 like, I love the coding, yeah, it's like we code switch, and I think,
Yeah.
when we're talking to other designers, like, we sort of, what's the right word? Like you said, code switch, like, we'll talk business with the business people, but we talk design with the
Mm,
designers, and, I don't know, like, how useful that is, to be honest. I mean, I guess, like, it is useful in that, like, we have a craft and, like, I think again, good thing about the plumbers and the welders. A welder's not gonna talk about, like, the quality of their bead to, a carpenter or something, but, like,
to a
they'll
client
wax poetical
to a client,
ab
right.
yeah, right, exactly, like, they'll wax poetical about the bead to other welders, and maybe that's not a bad thing, but I think it's just one of those things where I think, like, I think we just sorta, like, are we I question, I'm not saying we are, but I question, like, are some of us maybe lying to ourselves about our
Mm,
jobs and thinking that, we are doing things and this like godly this godly work we're doing on earth to help these people. In reality, it's like, are we really helping people? But I do say this, like, I don't want to be completely like pessimistic and poo-poo the
mm,
whole idea of fighting for users, because I do think that is part of our job, but it's through the lens of making money for the business. It's not necessarily just fighting for users and screw the business and business be damned, because otherwise we wouldn't have a job. But it's given the requirements, given the things that we have to do, how do we make this as good for those people as possible so that they will continue to pay, right? And
mm,
if they don't continue to pay, ultimately it's not good for the business. So we have to, there's a
mhm.
balancing act there, obviously, which is, again, like, you look at any LinkedIn post, they'll say something like balance user needs and business needs, whatever. But I think it's like maybe code switching, maybe is the right way to say it. We like over emphasize the user piece in conversations with among designers and stuff. And I
Yeah.
think new
I
people
wanna
maybe
I wanna
don't
keep
realize that
running
difference.
with
I don't know.
well, I wanna keep running with this because I've been fortunate enough to get to work with a lot of people, who, uh, I'll probably say, like, are they're showing up like they do at dinner and drinks rather than
Mhm.
maybe their public persona. And one of the things that I wonder, or what I hear a lot about, is the idea that in order to be successful or do their job well or honor the user, is that they have to convince business people to value design, value the user like they do, and that's really the only way they can make it happen.
Mhm.
And what I have found in this, and I don't know if they're related, but I think it's related to how design talks about design, in that uh, right, to succeed and to get to be able to do the best type of work, you have to convince the business to understand design and believe in the user like they believe.
Mhm.
And I don't think that is true. I think if we need that to happen, it's a trap,
Yeah.
because the business just won't, doesn't need to, in that
Yeah.
sense. And so, uh, are there ways that we can still um, find value or uh, enjoy our work when it's not just trying to, or
Yeah.
when somebody else has to value it the way that we do?
Yeah.
Um,
I I
that's
think it's like a
the sort of altruism I think is good, but then there maybe are side effects to that
yeah, I think there's like a side
you
there
know.
there like, there's a mindset shift, I think, where I think we tie that value as altruistic humans. We tie that altruistic human label, right, to our job, and I don't think we should. I think it's your job can finance that altruistic endeavor, whatever that altruistic endeavor is. It doesn't have to necessarily be through your 40-hour-a-week job, and, it's a job, it's transactional. You pay me for a thing. You need a button to convert. Here's your button to convert. I'm not getting my self worth from that transaction, but maybe I have a side hobby or I have a hobby. I mean, this is coming from a point
Mm,
of privilege, perhaps, that I have the maybe the time or the money to do a side project. Not everybody can. I'll recognize that. But I don't see like other profession like accountants or like people like that are like, oh, like, well, getting value out of my no, they're like working to retire so they can quit their goddamn job that they hate so
mm,
they can do whatever they want. And I don't see how design should be any different. I mean, it can be if you find the right company for sure, but I think most of us are not in that spot. And I think it's a mindset
yeah,
shift where, I want to do good. I want to help people. I want to do these things. That's why we became designers. We have empathy. We talk empathy all the time, right? Like we care about other people and we absorb their pain and their hurt and we bang our head against the wall as a designer when we can't solve their problems because the business doesn't
yeah,
value it. And at the end of the day, that's only hurting ourselves, right? You can only give if your cup is full. If your cup is empty, like how can you give? So,
yeah,
if that's the reason your cup is empty because you've tied that self-worth to that job, I don't see how you're ever gonna be fulfilled. And so I would say like
mm,
mindset shift, like use like Lex Roman has this really awesome saying where she's like, treat your full-time job like outside funding for whatever you want to do. And,
mm,
I'm not
mm,
saying work during a 40-hour work week, maybe you need to work night and weekends or whatever, but, use that finance, that money to pay for the lifestyle that you want, and then do whatever you can do on the side to bring that self value.
yeah,
And, like, we mentioned lifestyle creep before. I mean, this is where lifestyle creep comes in. When you get used to that 300,000, like I knew a guy recently, or this was a while ago, I guess, but he made like 500 grand working for Meta after comp, like
mm,
after equity, after all this stuff, right? 500 freaking $1,000. And you get to a point where you like live off of that and that becomes just normal. And then one day when that goes away, what do you do? Like, you can't become
yeah,
a plumber apprentice at that point and do a career shift because you're used to that salary and that lifestyle and you've become accustomed to it. And so you've got that lifestyle creep. I think that also is a huge problem for us in the tech industry where we've got it almost becomes like handcuffs. Like we're stuck finding another miserable job that we hate because if I make less,
Mm,
I can't afford this fancy house with the fancy gingerbreading that I appreciate so much on the front of it, you know what I mean? And so
yeah.
it makes it really hard for us to pivot, and then we can't career shift, or we can't move to, like, another thing. Like, I can't become a plumber right now because there's absolutely no way I could afford to become a plumber apprentice, even if 10 years from
Mm,
now, I'll be making as much as my buddy did as a master plumber.
yeah.
I just can't afford that, like, there's no way. So, I don't know if I'm answering your question. I think I went off on a
Well,
tangent.
yeah, I think it's more just us wandering through a conversation than asking a question. Um, but yeah, and we talked about that before of like lifestyle choices or whatnot that a good salary affords can be a trap sometimes.
Yeah.
There's two things that I want to do. First, mentioned it was during the pandemic. Well, the height of the pandemic, there was a lovely podcast called "The Hilarious World of Depression," and it was a
I
podcast
haven't
about
listened.
interviewing comedians or eventually creative people who
Uh-huh.
were really good at this work, but they tended to suffer from things like depression or
Mm,
self-deprecation or mental
yeah,
health issues.
yeah,
And there's some correlation that I sort of see in folks who want to serve and believe in the collective good. That there's this relationship. There's a question from Scott, and it's a good one. And it's why can't I get paid and show selfless concern for the well-being of users and make money for the business? That's my role.
yeah,
And I want to hear your thoughts. I'm going to say you can. And what I'll also add is there's nothing in the contractual agreement between you and a company that says you have to love the company.
right, right.
You
Yeah,
have to live and breathe the company's mission and values. There's nothing in there
yeah,
that says that's a requirement for you to do a good job.
yeah,
And I think that's me sort of saying you can get paid to show that selfless concern and make money for the business. And I think where that often gets mixed up is when we are coming at it from a place of saying, I do have this concern for the user. And there's all this pressure for a company and organization to say, no, you should really care about this company
mhm,
first.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I'm wondering what's your take on
Yeah,
Scott's
I
question?
think you absolutely can. I think that is sort of when I think of our role, I think it is absolutely balancing the user perspective, right? I mean, we're the ones often doing, user research, and we understand those problems and those pain points. If we're lucky, at least we're the ones getting to do the discovery. We're the ones getting to do the ethnography maybe and like observing. And I think it's our job because not everybody else is doing it. It's like engineers aren't doing it, the executives aren't doing it, the product managers sometimes might do this, but not always, to take
Mm,
that empathy that we have built for those users and observe those pain points and share them with the rest of the team. And this is when we talk about storytelling and we talk about all that other stuff. That's where this comes in, and the soft skills like influence and things apply. I think what happens with a lot of us though is it isn't that simple, and we often hit a wall where we find it very hard to do both of those things, where having
mm,
selfless concern and make money for the people, like convincing them that this is the right thing to do, or you know continuously seeing that problem get shifted down below the line whenever we do planning, because it isn't a priority anymore. And
mm,
I think that's sort of the challenge. Is it can happen, and ideally it would, but I think a lot of us don't see that every day. Um, and I don't know. That's sort of hard. Like I mean, I think back to like my enterprise work.
mm,
That was super rewarding, right? But like that project got defunded the minute they decided it wasn't valuable anymore. And they said, well,
mm,
we'll just lean out the shop floor and we'll just have them do paper because it's faster and it doesn't cost us millions of dollars a year to build. Um,
mm,
it's not solving problems for the users, and they hate the paper and they complain about it all the time. But guess what? Now that's what they have to do, or they have to use them off the shelf system like SAP that's like shoehorned into their process, and it
mm,
doesn't work, and they complain about it. They have to click 50 times. and it takes forever to load, whatever. It is not as optimal as that other system that we were building, but the business went that way anyway. And then I got laid off because the
Yeah.
product got cut. So anyway, yeah, I don't know, man. It's really hard. I mean, I think we should strive for that, Scott, for sure. But I think it's just the challenge of having a place that allows you to do both.
Yeah. I would say there's a couple things that are coming up for me, which is I've worked with plenty of people in support and sales and marketing and engineering and product and all of it who care just as much about,
Sure. Yeah.
the user, the customer. And they know of a lot about them just in different ways, just in different perspectives. And I think if anybody has run a small business or worked for yourself, you know immediately that you can't have the most polished, the most efficient thing in every aspect of your business.
Right.
And executives, for better for worse, their job is to in how
Take
it's
advantage
set
of stuff.
up right now. It's not how I want to run a business. It's not how I run a business, but in large scaled environments, the job is for them to decide which of those things they're okay with having
Yeah.
and which they are not.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, every one of those trade-off decisions is going to affect a group of people.
Yeah.
Um,
And here's what I would
and,
say going back to.
and
So,
that's
oh, sorry, I didn't
that's
mean to cut you
like
off.
that's brutal. That's brutal.
Yeah, it was like going back
Go
to
ahead.
this is where I think education, right, is failing us in that we are taught nothing about the realities of a business in design school. And then when we get to the job, we are then surprised and upset that a user's perspective is not taken into account, and all those other business things are like revenue drivers and the where our money's invested and like all those things. Those are completely new to us, and especially new designers are completely caught off guard by that, which is why you see so many like Maven courses about learning about the business and business acumen and all that stuff. They exist because that those things generally are not taught in our traditional design curriculum.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I think it's sad that like we don't even realize that till we often get the first job and we're trying to push for, user perspective and all that stuff. And we're just like, they're like, yeah, cute kid, get out of here, you know?
Well,
So anyway, I don't know.
there's
It's
another
just kind of my
yeah,
observation.
there's another aspect to it too, which a well-known business model is being the most affordable.
Hmm.
Having a product that is more affordable than others. And I like to ask the question, how many of us have ever had to buy something because it fit our budget?
Hmm.
And everybody pretty much, you should raise your hand. Yes, it fits my budget. And I would sort of say, how is that not human centered?
Mm,
How is that also not thinking about
I love that.
um, the user, the customer in a different way? Because my budget, my financial well-being is the core that allows me to eat, to have a roof over my mouth, or a roof over my mouth, a roof over my head.
I know what you
And I would say that is an aspect that isn't taught in either business school or design school.
mean. Hmm. Yeah,
That when
I love that.
making a deliberate choice of uh, flying, say, Frontier instead of Emirates, uh, that's often a choice because it allows me to fly in a way that fits my budget.
Yeah.
Buying cereal from the bottom shelf instead of the top shelf, still going to provide me what I need in that moment. And I think that's again where, um, and you probably have a lot of experience with this in employee tools. It's not the most polished. It's maybe not the cereal that we would like more,
Right. 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 Right.
um, but it absolutely fits
Yeah.
all of our needs. And I think there's this other aspect of when we go and work in industry to think about it in just those different ways. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I like working for a company that provides low cost, services. Are they the most polished? Are they the highest craft and taste? Not from the sense that maybe like I like, but maybe in this other way. And I do want to
Right.
go back and credit Lex. Lex is amazing. I love Lex Roman.
Yeah.
Um, Everybody go to lexroman.com and go hang out with Lex of if there's something that you are passionate about, a good way to think about work is to um, do that work, that exchange in order to fund what you love. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, I just go back on the thing about one of the I have this analogy I like to use for enterprise software. It's like one-ply toilet paper, like you go
Mm.
to, an institutional bathroom, right? They're not gonna have like triple ply Charmin soft in the one-ply bathroom, because who could afford that? Like you wouldn't have toilet paper. So it's like nobody likes one-ply toilet paper, but it's also there because it's cheap and it's there because if you didn't have one-ply toilet paper and you had to pay for the fancy Charmin, you wouldn't have toilet paper.
Or you
And I would
don't have
rather want
toilet paper.
or you don't have
Yeah.
toilet right. So I would rather or you'd run out because, like, you get 1 roll instead of, 50 rolls of one-ply toilet paper. So, I want toilet paper in the bathroom when I need it. I'm not the one paying for it, and I'm perfectly fine having one-ply toilet paper. But, you better believe that CEO in the corner office, they are not gonna have one-ply toilet paper in their office. They're gonna have the
Mm.
fancy Charmin stuff. So, like, it's just one of those it's like a trade-off, right? Just like you said. So, I don't know. It's kind of I love that analogy. One-ply toilet paper.
Yeah. And
You could
and
take that
and
and go.
are you built to be the kind of person who is okay having super fancy toilet paper while the people who work for you don't?
Yeah. And most
Maybe
people
not.
probably I don't know. No,
And
no,
that's
yeah, I don't know.
maybe a
Just
good sign.
I
You
used to
know,
work at a company, who
yeah.
the CEO would have 2 planes. He would travel with a backup jet
Mm,
in case the first one broke. That guy,
mm.
could not care less about the people, that
Yeah.
worked under him. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And I yeah, I think that's a good point. I've kept you long enough from your regular day-to-day
it's all good,
commercial,
man.
fun stuff. Uh, hey, I appreciate you coming to hang out, Sebastian, and
Yeah, of course.
just chatting and jamming, and these are fun
Happy to do it.
explorations. And if for anybody watching, if you want to come hang out and join me, I will share a link at the bottom, but it's the cdo.school/50 hyphen ways hyphen of hyphen gradient. And you can fill out a form, come hang out with me, and we'll keep it anonymous. And maybe that allows us to have a bit of a more open conversation.
Hell yeah.
Thanks again, Sebastian, for hanging out. And
Happy to do it. Thanks
yeah,
for having me.
cool. All
Appreciate it,
right.
man.
We'll see you soon, everybody. Cheers.